Thanks, guys, for that first carrier update of our morning. That's right, about Eric Kulisch on the line. He's our air cargo editor here at FreightWaves. Eric, welcome to FreightWaves Now this morning. How's it going for you today?
Pretty good. Hope you had a good 4th of July. I went to took a little road trip to Bend, Oregon. Very cool town. So enjoyed that. Hope you had a good one.
Thank you. Hopefully you didn't melt underneath all of that heat. Eric, today you're talking a little bit about DHL and the investments that they're making across the country. We talked a little bit about DHL's investments in robotics for their warehouses. How about when it comes to their air cargo side of things?
Yeah, well, it's DHL Express, and it extends beyond just air cargo. But they announced yesterday about $360 million of investments for North America and South America. So a lot in the U.S., but also Mexico, Brazil, some other countries. And they are, some of these investments are already underway, but between now and the end of next year, they're going to do about, like I said, $360 million of investments. And, that'll be in service centers where there's pickups and deliveries. There'll be in import, export, or international gateways, and some of their big hubs, including their Miami hub. They're expanding, which is like their 6th largest hub in the world. And they're also building a 224,000 square foot automated sortation center in up in Hamilton, Ontario. So, and all this is being driven by e-commerce. Their parcel volumes are up enormously. I think in the first quarter, parcel volumes were up in the Americas 33% and 41% just in the U.S. alone. And so, you're just seeing this impetus by whether it's air carriers, integrators, express carriers. Everything's just being accelerated by e-commerce, and so they're making these investments. They probably would have made a lot of these over time, but definitely the e-commerce is spurring that. And you also saw, as we talked about last week, FedEx, just ordered 20 new Boeing 767 freighters because their volumes are up so much in the first quarter, and a lot of that is driven by B2B and B2C.
Eric, good morning. Good morning, Eric. Mike Vincent here. Thank you for coming on. So is there anything to be read into the areas that they are focusing on and investing this $360 million in the Americas? You talk about South American points, right? Central American points, Canadian points, and United States, within here in the United States, right? So it is obviously the Americas, but are these origin destination points that they're looking at because of changes within supply chains, or is it just needed infrastructure moves?
Yeah, I think it's needed infrastructure overall, and they're putting in some automation in some of their facilities, in some of the big facilities in Mexico. One thing I forgot to mention was the air component of this. So a lot of it's physical infrastructure, but DHL is adding more aircraft, Boeing 777s. That those orders have already been in the pipeline. It's nothing new, but they're getting 4 more of those planes this year, and some of those planes will be used in the Americas as they are around the rest of the world. But they're also leasing some more planes. Previously announced a lease of 4 767s from Air Transport Services Group, and they said they would increase their for-hire contractors, right? DHL uses a lot of partner airlines to fly for them, so they're adding some routes, they're adding some contractors to fly those routes. So we don't know exactly all the details, but bottom line is, just like with the physical ground infrastructure, they're enhancing some of their air network as well.
Everybody's trying to bring more capacity online to take care of these insane cargo volumes. And speaking of cargo volumes, you've got some updated numbers for May on what's going on with how much freight is moving through that network. Talk to us about what those numbers show.
Yeah, well, actually, you got some numbers for May and also some preliminary numbers for June. So, and there's 2 different groups that provide the data, and it's a little hard to suss out, who's right, because the numbers differ some because their methodologies are different. But directionally speaking, the important thing is air cargo volumes are going up. The market's strong, and rates are up a lot as well. So yesterday, the International Air Transport Association released its numbers. They lag a little bit, so they're looking at May, and they said air cargo was up about 9.4%, which is really strong, but that's a little bit of a dip from about 11.3% growth in demand for April. But it's also the 13th consecutive month of growth in air cargo coming out of the pandemic, so that's really good. And it's also the 5th consecutive month that air cargo volumes exceeded global trade growth. So again, another positive directional thing. On the capacity side, things are slightly better. I think capacity is about 9.7% below pre-crisis. They gave some international, they gave the passenger capacity numbers as well. International passenger volumes are still very bad, but they're slightly better. I think international flights are about 85% of where they were pre-pandemic, probably 85% below. So again, that's the key, belly space that shippers are looking for. At the same time, another group called Clive Data Services came out, and they're looking at June numbers, and they said, volume was only up 1% in June, but that's positive growth because they had made down a point. So the difference is they both look at things from different methodologies, and here's one really interesting takeaway: the price differential between air cargo and ocean is really narrowing. Air is becoming a lot more competitive, and that's one reason we've talked about. You're getting a lot of air cargo traffic volumes coming off of the ocean, where it's so much chaos, and rates there are so high. A container to the West Coast, maybe $7,000, more than $10,000 to the East Coast. And if you add on the surcharges, it's way above that. So that means pre-crisis, it cost about 10 to 12 times more to ship by air. Now it's only about 6 times more. So even though air cargo rates are up about 90% from pre-crisis, the gap has narrowed considerably. And so air cargo is a lot more attractive to a lot of people who really want it or need it.
Yeah, it's another case of lease incredibly expensive, right? It's up 900%, and it's getting more attractive, which is an amazing statement to make, right? We've got a lot of infrastructure changes and things that are going on of that nature, obviously, in air cargo. That's what we're talking about. Let's talk about Chennault International Airport, the little airport that could. What's going on there, Eric?
Yeah. It's a very niche story. I wrote this story. I titled it "Fishing for Air Freight in Louisiana's Bayou Country," and it's a small airport. Well, let me rephrase that. It's a very large airport that's very small as far as commercial activity. Chennault International Airport's a former Air Force base near Lake Charles, Louisiana, southwest Louisiana, and they mostly have some maintenance repair organizations there. And every now and then they'll get a big Antonov freighter come in with some project cargo for the oil and gas sector, but they really don't have any cargo business. And for economic development purposes, the state is pitching in, and they're going to build a $4 million, they broke ground on a $4 million cargo warehouse. And it's more like build it and see if they will come, because who knows who will be interested in that location. It's out of the way. It's about 2 hours east of Houston, so it's a little bit of a gamble. But and will people want to go there? They're hoping that people might want to avoid Houston or some other locations where there's more passenger traffic and therefore some more congestion or time to taxi to the cargo terminal. And they say they could unload and load those planes really quickly. We'll have to see. You have to factor in the drive to a major urban center, but it's an interesting. They say it could be faster and cheaper to use that, and that's what you've seen with some of these secondary airports like Rickenbacker and Pittsburgh and some others. There's advantages, but those places have some base cargo that people can, that starts things off, and they're also got great geography. centrally located. So, it's a long shot here, but they're also not throwing in that much money, so it might be worth it.
I was going to say Lake Charles is kind of that area, they were ravaged by hurricanes last year,
Yeah.
and they need that infrastructure support to try and get that area back on its feet. So that was going to be my question is this kind of a trend that we're going to see with these smaller, I guess, urban population centers taking on this idea of more cargo, bring more jobs, more infrastructure?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just how bad congestion gets. Now, I've not heard about problems in Houston. It's a big airport. You have to taxi a few minutes, or maybe wait to get off the runway. But I haven't heard about congestion at the cargo terminals like you see in Chicago, Atlanta, and other places. But there's an airport called Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, and that's not the biggest of cities either. And they're getting they've really ramped up, and they have the BMW plant there, and they're getting a lot of freighter activity increasing. But they're also not that far from Atlanta. They're on the eastern seaboard, so the geography there works for them. I don't know if someone will find the value proposition and go, this could work. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Great.
It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out because, you're bringing in these freighters. There's more freighters being bought, right? And we just discussed that as well. So how much of that belly cargo is actually going to return to the airlines once they are up and running internationally, which is still down, 85% from where it was before? Will there be freight there for that belly? I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll have to see.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Always great to hear from you on the air cargo side. Go catch all of his stories up on FreightWaves.com.